There's something that's been on my mind lately, and I thought maybe it's worth talking about. I've got a feeling I'm probably not the only one thinking about this. So I want to ask you something. Have you ever felt like you're meant to do more than one thing in your life just because you're curious about so many things, so many different topics, ideas, or directions? Or maybe people have told you, hey, you're a bit all over the place, like you jump around too much from job to job, idea to idea, always switching things up. Like you just can't stick to one thing? I've heard that many times from my friends, my family, and for a very long time it made me question myself. Like maybe I just didn't have enough discipline or I was afraid to really commit to something. So, whatever it was, at some point I started believing there was something wrong with me. But thanks to that quiet drive I always had, I kept going, exploring, even when it didn't make sense to others. And then one day, I came across a word that I'd seen before, but for some reasons, that time it just hit differently. And it's called Polymath. It's basically someone who's not built for just one path, someone who's actually curious into a lot of different things and drawn to explore more than one direction. So their strength isn't just picking one lane and staying there, it's more like diving into different fields, connecting the dots, and following that curiosity wherever it leads. So, if you ever felt like the whole idea of one career, one identity doesn't quite fit, and you've got a bunch of interest pulling you in different direction, then yeah, this video is for you. Because if you are anything like me, you probably went most of your life without ever even hearing that word. So, why is that? There are a few big reasons. First of all, it's not just part of a mainstream culture. We grew up hearing words like specialist, expert, and occasionally generalist, but polymath, that sounds kind of rare, academic, and maybe even a little pretentious. And depending on where you grew up, it might feel even further off. If you grew up in an Asian family, you probably had three options: doctor, lawyer, or maybe finance, because your parents thought that was the safest path to success. But being curious about everything, that didn't always feel supported. Some cultures celebrate exploration, and others quietly discourage it, like it's a distraction from what really matters. And second, I think school hasn't always celebrated range. Most of us are raised to believe there's a clear path: pick a subject, pick a major, get a job, and the sooner you choose, the more successful you will be. Or at least that's the message most of us grew up with. But what happens when you don't follow that path? When you change direction, explore new things, or lose interest after you've gone deep enough to get it? People don't say, oh, yeah, you must be a polymath. No, they say more bluntly, just pick something and stick with it. Or you should focus on something safer, more secure. And when you hear that long enough, you start to question yourself. So you start to tone things down just to fit in. Maybe it's to keep your parents happy, or because at work not everyone gets it. So some people find having lots of interest inspiring, and others just smile politely, like they are not sure if they should be impressed or worried just because they still prefer the straight path. So you stop talking about certain things then. And after a while, all that pressure to just pick up one thing builds up because deep down, your curiosity keeps asking for more. So you follow it. And you dive into whatever sparks your interest. You learn, you explore, you even start setting quiet goals just for yourself. Until one day, you catch yourself thinking, hey, wait, what if there's nothing wrong with me? Or what if I'm just wired to do more than one thing in life? And it's a question more of us are asking these days because when you really think about it, isn't it kind of strange how it works? The moment someone becomes successful, suddenly their curiosity across disciplines is seen as brilliance. But before that, that same curiosity is often dismissed as a lack of focus or people start to question you. And thankfully, in the past few years, that thinking has started to shift because books like Range by David Epstein, which celebrates people with diverse skills, and Emily Rapnick's talks on multi-potential light have How people finally name what so many of us have felt for years but never had the words for. So if the word polymath is new to you, maybe it's just because no one ever told you that it might apply to you. And now, looking back at my own path, I see it more clearly than I ever did before. I've reinvented myself more than once, and from the outside, it might have looked like I was all over the place. But what I was really doing was figuring things out, trying to make sense of it all, and making each step count in some way and see where things could lead. And yeah, at the beginning, I took the classic route: finance, chasing stability. And then I moved into something completely different, which was photography. That's where I finally found my creative freedom and the kind of expression I've been longing for. I studied fashion design in my 30s and even put my own designs out into the world. A few years later, I moved into the luxury industry and took on all kind of roles, from production to retail, sales, consulting, and even mentoring. Not because it was my ultimate dream path, but because I wanted to understand more, to learn and to stack my experiences and to build skills I hadn't yet mastered. Like, I wanted to get better at communication, to understand human behavior, what really drives people to buy, and one thing led to another. And through my work, I got to meet people I never imagined I'd cross paths with. Clients who welcomed me into their world, and just by being around them, I pick up so many things I'd never been exposed to before. Things like how people with serious money approach life, how they make decisions, how they see time and risk. And at the same time, I started to understand how business really works. And it wasn't just the numbers, it was the subtle things that stuck with me, like how cultural background shapes decision making, how emotions drive choices, especially when it comes to beauty, comfort, or status. That's when I also started to develop something else, a kind of emotional awareness I hadn't really have given much attention to before. Not just about choosing the right words, but how to sense what's going on beneath the surface. To pick on tone, body language, the unspoken things people carry into a conversation. All of that, it changed the way I connect with people, the way I listen and respond. And outside my work, my curiosity never left me. I've always been drawn to the world beyond what I already know. So, traveling, learning languages, discovering how other people live and think, it still excites me. And in a way, all of it brought me here to this moment on YouTube, which I also never really planned, but now it feels like the most natural place to share what I've learned. Not because I've got all the answers, but because the more I reflect on my own path, the more I see how it connects to something bigger. And maybe that's the point, that our personal stories aren't separate from what's happening around us, because the world is shifting fast. We're entering a time where being curious and multi skilled actually doesn't feel so unusual anymore. It's becoming a strength. You can see it everywhere. People starting side hustles, learning new skills online. Some are doing it by choice, others because the systems they relied on just aren't working anymore. And it's not just individuals. Even companies are starting to look for people who can wear more than one hat, who think across disciplines and adapt quickly. Funny enough, even hiring managers are catching on. I recently read a LinkedIn study that said over 60% now prefer people who can adapt and bring a mix of experience instead of just deep expertise in one area. And here's the thing, we are living through a time of massive change, a kind of in between where work culture still expect us to specialize, yet also be adaptable, creative, and entrepreneurial. And that's where the real tension shows up. And I think part of the problem is most jobs titles rarely do us justice. They build for companies, useful for organizing teams, assigning departments, and fitting people into salary bands. But they don't reflect who you actually are or who you are becoming. Being curious across different disciplines, switching lanes when you need to, that's just how some of us learn best. It's a valid and actual effective way of learning and growing, especially now between AI, automation, and how fast everything is changing. And in times like this, staying curious across disciplines, switching lanes when you need to, that's what helps us to stay flexible and relevant for what's coming next in the future. Not just for careers, but for how we solve problems, make decisions, and stay creative. For example, take someone who studied medicine but ends up working as a designer. They are not just focused on how things look, they design with an instinctive understanding of how people actually interact with the world because they've studied it from inside out. That's where multidisciplinary thinking really makes a difference because it helps you spot things others might overlook. So you make better decisions, not just by logic, but by experience and your gut instinct. And that kind of thinking, that way of connecting across disciplines, it also often gets misunderstood. A lot of people think being multi passionate is something you are just born with. Like it's a rare trait you either have or you don't. But in my experience, it's more of a choice. It's how you decide to engage with the world, what you explore, what you connect, and what you keep coming back to. It's not about having 10 job titles, a bunch of degrees, or a shiny resume. It's more about how you follow your curiosity and how that shapes the way you think and grow. Maybe let's say you get into calligraphy, not just for the art, but because it slows you down. It teaches patience, precision, and focus. And you'll notice over time, the things you learn in one area quietly shape how you show up in others. That's the real value of stacking, taking what you learned in one space and using it in ways you've never expected. So you're building your own way of seeing things, something that helps you figure stuff out, connect ideas, and approach problems in a way no textbook ever could. And in a world where industries shift overnight and where safe jobs aren't really safe anymore, having that mindset, it's one of the most relevant strengths you can have right now. For me, it's being able to start over without feeling like you are starting from scratch. That's really what I've been trying to do my whole life. Not chase titles or approval, but make something meaningful out of everything I've learned. So maybe the better question isn't, what do you do? It's, what are you building with all that experience? I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know what you think about this style down in the comments. And if you found it interesting, helpful, or it just gives you something to think about, maybe pass it on to a friend who might need it. Because, sometimes hearing the right words at the right time can give someone else the courage to keep going. And if stepping out of your comfort zone is something you've been thinking about too, I'll be sharing more on that on an upcoming video, and I'll leave it linked here very soon. So feel free to stick around if that sounds like something you want to hear more about. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you hopefully in my next one.